Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to our Lutheran Service Builder Advanced Worship Serving Planning webinar. I'm Anna Johnson, and I'll be hosting today. I wanted to thank you again for all coming, and also just to let you know, I know that many of you have been with Peter Frank in the webinars earlier this week, and you received the email from him. He's a little bit under the weather today, so I'm filling in, so I appreciate in advance your patience with me as I go through this webinar. A few housekeeping things to keep track of before we get started. You should be able to see and hear three things throughout the webinar. One, you should be able to see my PowerPoint slides and my screen. Two, hopefully you'll see my webcam. And three, hopefully you can hear me. If at any time one of those three things isn't functioning, please just let me know, leave me a message in the chat box right away so we can get that resolved as soon as possible. Just a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of letting us get to know you and you get to know us before we get started today. I'm Anna Johnson again. I'm a marketing manager here at Concordia Publishing House. You can see my email and my phone number here on the screen. If you want to get in touch with me after the webinar, please feel free to email or call me. I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible when that happens. Few more points. We'll have about 50 minutes for the presentation today and then about 10 minutes for questions, give or take, depending on how quickly I go through things today. You're always allowed to ask questions throughout those. So if you see me doing something and I went too fast and you want me to circle back to it later, that's perfectly fine. If it's something that's really relevant at that point in time, I'll try and address it right away. But if it's not relevant or if I think we can hold off to the end, I'll definitely answer your question at the end of the presentation again today. And also the recording will be shared. We know that many of you guys are busy in the church office. You have people going in and out. So if you need to step out for a minute, it's no worries. We'll send you an email with the recording link after the webinars are completed. And also they'll all be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you missed the email, just look on our YouTube channel as well. A little bit about Concordia Publishing House. I'm going to guess that most of you know a little bit about us already. We are the publishing arm of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and we've been around since 1869, helping you guys in your most important work of proclaiming the gospel message. And this is one of the reasons I'm so excited about this webinar today, is because we really get into some of the topics about Lutheran worship and how God comes to serve us in worship and how our bulletins, how our services can help reflect that. I'm going to make a few assumptions as well today. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with Lutheran Service Builder. Like I said, Peter has done 2 other webinars this week already. If you haven't had a chance to see those, I definitely encourage that you do that before you dig too deep into this one, because they're kind of building on top of each other. Hopefully you've also planned and exported services too, because I'm going to just breeze through that part of the presentation today so we can focus on some of the more in-depth topics. And I hope also that you're eager to get more out of Builder. And actually I know that by virtue of the fact that you signed up today. And it's really cool to see all these different features of Builder come together. I'm really excited to share. And I also know you're very busy, so I'll try and be cognizant of the time we have together and not go too far over on our time limit. Now we're going to have you tell me about yourself. I'm going to get a poll going here. I have 4 very simple questions, and these questions will just help me to tailor my presentation today to you and to make sure that I'm covering things I think that you guys are interested in. So the first question is, I'm going to launch it. It says, what is your primary role at church? Hopefully you guys can see that. If you can just click on the screen and vote there, and then let me know. Looks like we have some pastors, some church administrators. If you marked other, if you can just let me know in the question box what your role is, so that'll help me out there. Thanks for everybody that answered that question so far. I'm going to close this one. Okay, second question. How long have you been using Lutheran Service Builder? So are you new to Lutheran Service Builder? You've been using it for a while, or you've been a really long time? And thanks, Carol, I did see your message come through about your role at church. So either less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years. Okay, it looks like most of us have been using about 3 years or less. We have one like really long-term user. Thank you for that. Okay, 2 more questions. You guys are doing great. How many other Lutheran Service Builder training webinars have you attended? So have you attended the complete overview, introduction, or from builder to bulletin? If you haven't had any of them, just feel free not to vote. I forgot that. So it looks like we have at least one person who did the introduction, a couple people who used from builder to bulletin. Great. Thank you guys. Okay, last question. And this will be, what lectionary does your church use? A lot of the things we're going to go through today usually revolve around the 3-year lectionary, but as we are finding who is using the 1-year lectionary, we want to make sure that we're helping you guys out so that we're making materials and resources that are applicable to you. Looks like almost everybody here today is using the 3-year lectionary. Again, thank you guys for letting me know a bit more about yourself. That really helps me as we go through the rest of the presentation today. Goals of the webinar today, I want to show you guys how to incorporate additional orders of service. So if you were at some of the earlier webinars, hopefully you saw how to just set up a service with divine service settings 1 through 5. I'll show you today how to use special services. So we have some services mostly for Holy Week that you might use once a year, and it might be hard to remember how to use those. I'm also going to show you how to incorporate different rites and ceremonies in a service. So this is going to kind of be twofold when we go through there. One, I'll show you how to add a rite in one of the orders of service you've selected already, and then I'll also show you how to create a standalone service that just has that rite, like a wedding service or a funeral service. We'll talk about setting global styles and themes. These are things that help make Builder more personalized and save you some work when you're exporting to Word, to your bulletin, to your PowerPoint, whatever you use, and also how to set all of those global preferences. So without further ado, let's get started. It's going to take me a few minutes here just to get myself centered. So we're going to start out with additional orders of service. So we talked about divine service settings 1 through 5. There's also the daily office. So we have matins, vespers, all of those different services, which you might do at your church. Maybe at some Sundays you do matins, and then other Sundays you do divine service. Maybe you switch off between the two, or compline. And then we'll talk about other services that you might have. And I'm just going to list all of these out here. Hopefully these are familiar to you. Some of them are very occasion specific, and then some of them might be for smaller services. Like I know in chapel here at CPH we use responsive prayer 1 and 2, sometimes even service of prayer and preaching. So I'll show you where those are located in the Builder, and also where the litany is located, corporate confession and absolution. Then we'll talk about seasonal services. Again, you'll notice that most of these are during Holy Week, and again, these are all in the same portions of Builder. So let me get my screen transferred over here. I'm going to open up Builder, and I think this will look very familiar for most of you. So the first thing we're going to do when we get set up here, I'm going to go click in this calendar view, and then we'll select a certain day that we want to plan a service for. We'll just say that we're planning a service for this coming Sunday, May 7th, for Easter 4, and maybe your church wants to use matins instead of divine service. So we'll just click on the date name, we'll do plan this service, and then I'll click OK. Now right now you can see this is on the setting, divine service setting 1. So to change that, all you need to do is click in this change button over here, and a screen will pop up with all your different service outlines, and you can see that these services are outlined just in the way that you would expect them, as we had written in the slides to begin with. So we have the daily office here, we have your other services here, and then we have your seasonal services down here. So I'm going to just switch this one to matins very quickly. And you can see that a preview comes up here. Now while you're clicking through here on this choose an order of service screen, it doesn't exactly change your order of service until you hit the OK button. But one thing to be aware of is that once you hit the OK button, everything kind of resets. So don't do too much in your actual service until you have to have your order of service selected here. And you can see here's our matins, and we have a couple options here. Hopefully when you guys went through here, Peter showed you how to select all these different elements within a service. So we can just go through here, select a matin service such as this. When you're done, you can just click out of it. You can start planning your bulletin, any of those other features that you would like to do. Now say that you wanted to incorporate a special rite into your Matin service. And for something like this, I'm thinking maybe you wanted to incorporate a rite of baptism. That would be a very good time to do that here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Here's the opening versicles and Matins. And we say we want to insert a rite here. So I'll select this insert button up at the top. Excuse me, and then we'll go over to the rites tab here. So you can see under rites, everything's organized and ordered exactly like you would hope it to be. Here's the section for holy baptism, so I'm just going to click here. You can click through in this middle column here, and kind of similar to that choosing an order of service screen, you're able to preview the elements without changing your order of service over here in the left. However, as soon as you select the rite that you want, you can just click on the name right here and then insert it wherever you want to in the service. So we'll say we'll do it before the office hymn but after the psalmody. And then you have an option here where you're allowed to include the entire contents of rite or only the name of the rite and the page number. So for this example today, I'll just select the include entire contents of the rite, and then we'll go back with another rite and show you how to do just the page number and the name. So you can see that now I have a baptismal section over here on the left side of the screen, and there are a few yield signs to let me know I'm not chosen a processional hymn, a baptismal hymn, those types of service elements. And then you can just page through here, and if I went over to my bulletin view, just give my computer a minute to catch up, you can see that once we scroll down, the rite should be included in here. Just scroll down. Here we go. Here's our rite in the bulletin view. So you can do this for any type of rite you'd like to add into the service. I know my church especially has confirmation coming up. You can do this with confirmation. And then if you want to delete a rite after service, if you realize that you didn't actually want it in that service, you can just use this delete button over here. And it says how many elements it's deleting. So I'm clicking on this baptism section up here. It's letting me know that all of the elements from my baptismal rite will be deleted from the service. And you can see it goes back to normal as it would be. So that's how you select between services, between matins, between the divine services for your service outline, and also how you would insert a rite. But what about those special services? And for this example, I'm actually going to go back to the future a little bit because we just got done with Easter, but most of our really special services are during Easter and Holy Week, and I want you guys to be prepared for next year when you have those things coming up. So I'm going to select my Good Friday service actually. Just going to do my regular service. I'm going to plan it as usual and then click OK. Hold on, I forgot a step. There we go. Plan this service. And say I wanted to completely change the service to be a Good Friday service. There are also other services in here. And we'll pick Tenebrae Vespers for Good Friday. You can see that there's not too many seasonal services, but the ones we have, again, are really important for Holy Week. I'm going to change this over here, and you can see now that I have a custom order of service that's meant just for this holiday. And the really cool part of this is that we built everything into Builder to match what's in the agenda, what's in the altar book, so that all the options are right at your hands when you're ready to start service planning. If you select this order of service and say you wanted to incorporate elements from other services in here, you can always do this with your common elements. So you have the opening versicles, psalmody, psalm, and hymn. Maybe you wanted to include a creed or move the creed, although it's not intentionally included here. You can just do this, click and drag it over. Maybe you'll do it right before the Lord's Prayer. Actually, we'd probably do it right here. And you can mix and match these different service elements. So once you select a service, you're not stuck just with those particular service elements or with that service. You can always change your order of service over here. Hopefully I did not go through that too quickly. If you guys have any questions on selecting an order service or inserting a rite into a service, let me know. We're going to go through a few more rites, and I'm actually going to pause for a moment. moment to talk about the agenda. So the agenda for Lutheran Service Book is a really helpful tool in letting you choose where you place rites. I have my agenda right here. Hopefully most of you guys have one of these at your church already. I'm just going to breeze through these slides pretty quickly. So there's the agenda, and one of the nice things about an agenda is that it tells you where to place the rite in the service. So you can see that in this bullet point number 2 right here for the reception of members, it tells you where to insert it in the order of service. So it says this rite may take place in the divine service, following the hymn of invocation, or prior to the prayer of the church. So one thing we always encourage you guys to keep in mind, I'm sorry my phone went off there for a minute. One thing we always encourage you guys to keep in mind is that when you're inserting a rite into the service, make sure to check the agenda first before you get any farther in that. We're going to go back to Lutheran Service Book, and I'm going to show you a few more rites and where to incorporate them. So we did baptism already, but what about standalone services where that's the only thing in the service? Something like matrimony, something like a funeral service, where it's the only place you go in the service. To do something like that, I'm going to go back to the home screen and then go to the calendar view. So once I click on that, we'll get back in reality here. I'll go back to May and say that your church was having a marriage service on this Saturday the 6th. I'm just going to click on that service, and you'll do a few things a little bit differently before you get into your service planning view when you're doing one of these standalone services here. So where it says feast, festival, or occasion, you're not going to select one of these top ones here. You're going to go all the way down here to occasions and select wedding. What that does is it takes just the rites for the wedding service and puts them into your service plan. So we'll say this is the Johnson and Smith wedding. Then once you have your service named, you can do plan this service and then click OK. And you can see that the wedding rites should be included here. So here's a good example. We have the salutation and collect for the day, which is the collect for the wedding. And then you can see other related collects here. So it's suggesting in Lutheran Service Builder, hey, we know you're close to the fourth Sunday of Easter. Do you really want this wedding service in here, or do you not? And it lets you pick. Now, depending on how churched your couple is or not, you might not want to include all of these elements in your standalone wedding service. So just as you would when you're planning a regular service, you're definitely allowed to delete some of these things. So if you wanted to take the confession and absolution out of the wedding service, you can do that. And then you can determine your readings, determine if you're going to do Alleluia and verse, the creeds, everything like that. That's how you do a wedding service. Let me do one more example like that. We're going to go back to the home screen. And let's say that you had a funeral coming up at your church. We'll say the funeral is scheduled for the 9th of May. So to do a funeral, all you need to do is, again, go to this top bar right here, select down to occasions, and then select funeral from your message right there. Then we'll go into plan this service. And then we'll have to go over here into our orders of service and select which ones we want to use. So you can see I can select funeral service right here. I actually forgot to do that in the other example. I'm sorry, guys. And we'll click OK. And then you can see all the elements for your funeral service would be included here. You're allowed to select your hymns and other service elements from right there. Let me see if we have any other rites that we want to go over today. I think that about covers it. Again, guys, please feel free to ask questions if you have anything like this that you need clarification on. The next thing we're going to go through here after we're done with rites and selecting services is global styles. And as I was saying a little bit earlier, these global styles are what allow you to really personalize your service, to build it out, to match your other church's branding. I know that many churches, depending on your church size, you might have a website that has a certain style guide or style sheet. If you're a larger church, you might even have somebody at your church that just deals with styles. Lutheran Service Builder has this global styles feature built in so that you're able to match your bulletin, create kind of one cohesive branding image for your church. So these apply to printing, your theme and style sheet, formatting, and also to your presentation. So if you have overhead PowerPoint slides, we'll also show you how to use those themes and style sheets and formats. So let me get over back here to Lutheran Service Builder. So the style sheets will be accessible from either the bulletin view or the presentation view for your service. So I'm going to go over into the bulletin view now. And the area we're going to focus on right here today are themes and formats. And the first thing I want to go through here is themes. So we have a number of built-in themes that go along with Lutheran Service Builder, and I just want to explain some of them very quickly. So the UI default setting is the setting that aligns with ever the default for what your word processing software is. So if you use Microsoft Word and you had this UI default style selected, whenever you saved your bulletin to Word, it would automatically go into that Calibri and Times New Roman, whatever your word processing software has. The second default here, if we give it a minute to update, you can see that the font changed a little bit. It went from a sans serif to a serif font. The default theme is the default for Lutheran Service Builder. So that's just a good thing to keep in mind, the differentiation between these two. This first one is the default for your word processing software. This is just the default for Builder. The other nice thing that I know we get a ton of requests for is a large print worship folder or worship service. This large print option should be built in for everybody's Lutheran Service Builder. So if you have a certain set of bulletins that you make large print every week, you can get your entire service planned and then select this large print option when you export into Word, and then you're not having to redo the sizes and the font styles every week. You can choose no formatting, and you'll see this looks pretty plain. We would think that most people aren't using the no formatting, but if you have a certain special exception at your church, you can definitely use that no formatting option. The next option here is Times New Roman, and you'll see that updates as soon as possible. And then we have Creative Worship. So I should have asked at the beginning how many of you guys are familiar with Creative Worship. The point here is that if you're importing services from Creative Worship, if you use the Creative Worship resources and you want everything to look the same as it would in that disk you get from Creative Worship, you can select the Creative Worship theme right here, and it'll automatically match that Word document that you receive with your CD every year. The next thing I want to do, these are some other style sheets I created myself. I'm going to show you guys how to do a brand new style sheet. So if you want to do a brand new style sheet, you can go over here into Edit Style Sheets, and then you can see your list of current style sheets is here, and you can see this was actually one I did before. And then here's another one named New Style Sheet, which is where we'll start from. If you have a lot of custom style sheets, you can always rename them. So if you wanted this one to be Style 01, you could do that, and then just click off it and it'll save as soon as possible. And then you can always click New to start anew with a new style sheet. So we're going to recreate that serif style sheet that I had done a few minutes ago. So I'll just type in serif here. And then the next thing you want to do is select your font for each of the different elements in your worship service. So you can select the elements down here. You can see there's body, caption, copyright, heading, rubric, and subcaption. So we're going to just tick down the list right here. You can either use this drop-down menu here, or you can actually select the elements here and it automatically updates to this drop-down menu. So you can see I clicked here, it said subcaption. If I click here, it says caption. If I click here, it says heading. So either way, you can get started when you're selecting your styles. Once you have one thing selected, you'll just go over here to your font selector. So let's say that for our headings we want to use a larger serif font. We're going to use Gaudi Old Style. Hopefully I said that correctly. So I'm going to go up here. Take me just a minute. I'm going to select this. And once you have your font selection, you have some other options too. If you really want that heading select to stand out, you can select bold right here. And then sometimes I know what we do here at CPH is when we have a really important heading, we'll make it all uppercase. So you can just go over here to your Advanced tab, click on uppercase, and you can see that your preview here will change to all uppercase. So this might be a nice way to differentiate between those headings in your service and the rest of the body text, the rubrics or rites. You can also change the position of your different elements, so this might be really good if you want to offset your heading with the other elements in your service. So I'm just going to move over here to the rubric, and let's say we want the rubrics to be indented. All you need to do is select these indentation options. You can see it indents it as it's going along, so you can see how things move along. Now the rubrics are kind of instructions, and if you look in the agenda, maybe even in Lutheran service books, you'll notice that the rubrics are sometimes a different color. So what if you wanted to replicate that in your bulletin? Maybe you're doing a PDF version of your bulletin or you have a color printer. To change the color, you just need to go in this color selector here. And then you can select any color you want. I'll just use this straight up red color. And then you can see that it changes to red right here. So we're going to just keep doing this for all the different portions of our service. I'm going to go change this to Century School Book. Just give me a minute here. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to go right down the line here. Again, you can click on the actual element and change it through your font selector. Or you can click down here up in body and it'll select that element automatically for you. So we'll just go up right here. And then I'll just select the position here. You can see that we have this indented 0.5. Maybe I don't want it indented that dramatically, so we'll just change that. As soon as you have everything set just the way you like it, click OK. And I know mine takes a little bit to update here. And you can see hopefully that my font updated as soon as I updated that style sheet. And the nice thing is that once it's saved up in here, it will change and save for all subsequent services you have. So if you have one service like this and maybe a more contemporary service, you can just flip back and forth really easily between your different service types. We're going to create one more style for you guys just so we are really sure we know how this goes. So again, we're going to go up to our theme selector, edit style sheets, and then I'm going to make a sans serif font style. Once I have that all set, I'm just going to change all my defaults up here. Let's say maybe you want to change this to Arial. I just missed it. There we go. You can do bold and italics or underline. Again, I think we'll change this rubric color to be red. And then select your different font style. And again, you don't have to stick with just one or two fonts, although that's probably what our designers would recommend. You can use the exact same font combinations that you use everywhere else. So if you wanted to have the headings and the captions and the subcaptions be in Arial, but then you wanted the body text to be in Times New Roman or a different font, you can always do that just as you would like it. Just give me a few minutes to get updated here. I know it's not too exciting watching me click through things, but hopefully you guys can see everything that's going on. And I just have one more thing to check, and that's the body, and we'll change the body to Homa. Okay, I'm just going to click OK, and again, as soon as I click OK, it changes everything in my service to those defaults I selected in there. The next thing we're going to go through is setting these same things up for a slide. And with the slides, you can actually have a lot more fun when you're going through everything. So here are our slides, and there are two built-in themes for slides. You have this LSB iron, which has the Lutheran Service Book symbols over here on the left and is a darker color. And then we have the LSB basic that is just a white background with black text. And I know for most of you, those aren't really ideal for what you're going to be using your slides for. So we'll show you how to customize these slides and add them to your theme so you're not re-customizing things in PowerPoint every year. So to customize your slides, we'll just go over here and edit slides templates. And you'll see that this looks a little bit different than the editing the bulletin templates as we were doing before. To select this slide template, all you need to do is click New in here, and then you're allowed to rename your slides. So we'll say this is slide template 01. I'm not too creative with my word names here. And with the text, it's very similar to what you guys just experienced in the selector here, except there's probably going to be the same options, but less in the preview here. So for your body text, maybe you want to change that. We'll go up here, change it to Arial so it matched our slides. And then we'll go up here into our heading text. Maybe change that one a little bit. Then we'll click OK. Now you can see one slight difference here was that whereas the previews in the bulletin kind of dynamically updated, in the slides you're going to have to wait until you click OK to actually see what that's going to look like. But that's no worries. You don't lose all your work. You just select the slide you wanted to do and then edit template. So we'll just go through here. We can again change the rites and the colors. So we'll go through rubric here. I'll change that to red. Maybe I want a little bit less intense red, but you can do whatever you want in there and then just click OK. The other thing that we know a bunch of churches like to do is have their own built-in slide background images. And for those of you who might be creative worship customers, we know that we have those digital pyramids that come with the backgrounds for you. So I'm going to show you guys how to add a background image to your slides so that your slides can look just as customized as your church wants them to be. Just give me a minute. So you'll open your file folder here. I'm going to go to my desktop where all of my items are set. And you know what? I saved these in the wrong place. I'm sorry about that, guys. Just give me a few minutes here. Maybe if I cancel out, we'll go through. Here we go. So this is actually my worship service planning book, and you can see that I have these things here. They're called digital pyramids, and they come with Creative Worship, and they're built-in PowerPoint background slides that you're able to use already. So you can actually use these as the built-in default for Lutheran Service Builder. So I'm going to just select Easter Square 4 here and then click Open. And when I do that, you can see that a preview is given right in my screen here, and then when I click OK, it'll let me preview those in my slides. So you can add a custom background. If you want it to be a solid color, you can do that as well. Just go back to your edit templates and go to your background, and instead of importing this file up here, you would just change the background color. So maybe if you wanted a blue background for some reason, a gray background is probably a better option. You can select that, and then once I click OK, it should update those things. Let me just give it one more minute here. I think I messed it up because I had a file in there too. There we go. Yeah, so you can customize these as much or as little as you would like. And then once you're ready to export to PowerPoint, it's saving you some of the work in PowerPoint that you had done before. So I hope that makes sense for printing your themes and style sheets for the bulletin and for your PowerPoint slides. Let's go over here to our Formats tab. And you can see that in our service formats we have these default options. So you can default it to be title only, your text only, sorry, excuse me, or just whatever settings you would like. To edit these service formats, you can just go in here and you'll see it brings up your user settings for you excuse me, these are specific to you and allow you to select how you want things to appear on your slides. So I know, for example, that at my church, when we have slides up on the screen, we have the complete text and the title of the document, but not the page number in Lutheran Service Book. If you wanted to include elements that made it more friendly for people that are using Lutheran Service Book, you could just go over here into your formats and then select something like title and page number, and you can see it'll automatically update for all your slides. And I'm actually going to go over to a slide. I haven't selected a hymn. I should probably do that now just to give you guys a better idea of what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit here today. There we go. We'll go back to our slide here. Let me go back to my user formats. So there's a couple ways to do this. You can select melody up here and it'll automatically put the melody in here, and I'm actually going to change back. That gray background is not the best to look at. Well, maybe I'm not going to change back. There we go. Okay, so here's a good example. Once you actually have your hymns selected, you can use this content options up here to select how you want them to appear. But if your church always does the same thing, you can actually edit that in service format. So you can select whether you want the text or the melody. Once I unclick this, it should go back to having the text as I selected it in my service formats. Awesome. Hopefully that made sense. Again, let me know if you guys have any questions and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. The next thing we're going to talk about are your global preferences. So we'll talk about your general preferences, maybe your unseasonable elements, how to set up different locations for your church. We'll talk about service schedules and default order of services for each of those. I'll show you where to include your hymn licenses and then get into some of the more advanced features and also talking about backing up your data. So to go into your global general preferences, we're going to go up in here and go to Edit Preferences right here. And you can see that there's a lot of different tabs within your preferences section. So I'm just going to go through each of these tabs and let you guys know what each of these things mean. So you can choose your internet connection. You can choose whether or not you want to check for updates on startup. If you don't have this check for updates on startup selected right now, I would highly recommend you select this. As we're getting ready for a new version of Builder, we're doing more updates actually to Builder 2 to get everything online and syncable. So if you don't have this checked, please do go to your Preferences General and make sure that that's checked. You can select your home startup screen, and then here's where you can select your global style sheets. So if you made one of those custom style sheets for your bulletin like we just did here, you can actually select it from here so that once you create every bulletin, you're not having to go back through and reselect everything every time. There's a beta updates box here, and although you're more than welcome to choose that option, I'm just letting you guys know since we're working on the new version of Builder, we're not going to be doing many beta updates to 2, so don't worry about that one too much. And then here we have our options for unseasonable elements. So this is saying that during times of the year like Lent, when we just got through, do you want Builder to automatically remove things like Alleluias or prompt you to remove them? I would guess that most of you here today want to use this automatic removal option because it saves time and effort and energy for you. But if you don't want to, you can always select this prompt option, and then if you wanted to remove it just for set services, you would do it over in your service plan over here. The next thing you have would be locations. So if you're a dual parish or maybe you're a big church and you have a mission plant and you have different services for the different types of locations, you can add different locations in here. All you need to do is select new, and then we'll say satellite site, for example. And then when you're making your slides, you can choose that here. You can choose your lectionary. So I know most of you are using the 3-year lectionary. You can use that. And once your lectionary is selected, it will help with selecting those readings for the week. It'll auto-populate the readings based on whatever series you're in. And then it's also going to ask you to use your average weekly attendance. This is important for copyright materials, and I think most of you should know because the attendance is tied to your billing. Next, oh, there we go. Next thing we're going to look at is service schedules, and this goes into what I was talking about earlier for your default order of service. So if you always do divine service setting 1 at your 8 o'clock service, you can do that right here. If you have more than these services, these are just a few examples, but maybe say you had a 9:30 service on Sunday. You can always add a new service here. Let me just type that in there. Great. And these service options are important. I'm actually just going to head out here in a minute. You'll notice these, especially when you're setting up your service from your calendar here. So if we go over here on the 14th of May, you can select your service times right here. So if you've ever wondered where these services auto-populate from, it comes from over here to Preferences, and then in your service schedule. You can also select midweek service times, and the midweek services will be determined by the season that you're in. So for example, you can see that I don't have any midweek services here in May because Builder knows that it's not the time for midweek Advent or Lenten services. But if you do have those, if you are in season, Builder will be able to tell when those services start based on the church year calendar. And then you can select those orders for midweek services. So maybe I didn't want to do Vespers for Advent services. Maybe I wanted to do evening prayer for those, and I wanted to do Compline for Lenten midweek services. You can change those here. Again, this is saving you a step, so you're able to change things in settings without having to click through and change them every week for your order of service. Here are your electronic license options. Again, most of you should know that to print and to use materials from Lutheran Service Book, you do need that LSB hymn license. Here is the section for LSB hymn license, but if you have other music licenses, this is where you would record them here. So if you have a CCLI license, you can do that by going over to this right-hand section of the screen, selecting New, and then once you click on it, you can rename it. So I might call this CCLI, and then whatever your unique CCLI license number is, you can set that in here. And again, you can do this for any different types of licenses you have for Lutheran Service Builder. The proxy tab, I'm actually going to skip over because I don't know a lot about that. If your church is in a situation where you have a tech advisor and you think you need to be using this, my #1 recommendation for you is to call our support team because they would be way more helpful than I would be talking to you guys about this. And then our advanced tab has to do with resolution for your bulletins and presentations. And then it'll ask you about warnings. These are mostly before you delete things, before deleting elements. It's just a double check on yourself. If you know what you're doing, if you've been using Builder for a long time, which I know that some of you have, you might not want all these warnings, so you can always double check those from here. I'm going to just click OK to save our settings. And the last thing we're going to talk about is backing up your data here. And I know that some of you who are attending this Builder webinar come from other software programs where the backup can be quite tedious, quite hard to do. For Builder, it's very simple. You go over to Tools and you have two options here. You have Backup Data and Restore Data. So to backup data, you just do Tools and Backup. It's not even asking you where to select your backup. Builder will take care of that for you, place the files. And then if you want to restore your data, all you need to do is click on Tools and then Restore Data. It's letting you know that if you've made any changes in the interim between the time you last backed up and when you're restoring, those changes will be lost. If you click OK, you can just select whatever state you want to load, and then you would click OK. I'm not going to do this now because this is on our shared server I don't want to mess too many people up. But if you ever need to back up, just remember, go to Tools and then either backup or restore based on what you're doing. Few other things in here that I just want to make sure you know. Check for updates. This would be good to do if you don't have that check for updates section selected from your general preferences. This will check with us to see if we have any updates in the meantime. And also you have this option to send your log files to CPH. I know that many of you have done that already, and probably many of you here, we had an in-app message pop up a few weeks ago, I believe, that was asking if you could share those for us. I just want to reassure you guys that when you send your log files to CPH, we keep them safe and secure. The main reason we use that data, we can develop in the future. Again, we're going to have a big release coming up within the next year, so hopefully with a new version of Builder. And the reason that we're able to move these updates is because you guys have sent us your data. So thank you for that is my main message. But if you ever see that again or get an email from us, that's where you would go for all of that. In elevation. So if you guys have any questions, again, now would be a great time to ask them. I'm just going to go through a few more housekeeping things before we officially end here. We just went through backing up in Lutheran Service Builder. I also want to let you guys know about LutheranServiceBuilder.com. I'm going to type this in here quick so you guys can see it. And I apologize, I can't type and talk usually at the same time. So if I pause a little bit here, that's what's going on. Here's our new and improved Lutheran Service Builder site. Just a little word of warning, some of the materials on this site are really for new customers or people that are looking at Lutheran Service Builder. And I want to pause just a minute. Sorry, Carol, that my audio is cutting in and out. I'm sorry. We'll definitely try and get that fixed before the afternoon session. But you can see, as I was saying, here's our Lutheran Service Builder site. If you are a customer already, which most of you are, you don't need to worry about this downloaded free trial, but we do have some other resources up here. You can learn about how Lutheran Service Builder began, you can learn about the features, and then you can also go here, if you scroll way down to the bottom and click on training, you can see all the upcoming training opportunities we have. And if you scroll even further down here, you can see all our recordings. So we'll update these recordings as soon as we get them. Again, so if you need to share this with somebody at your church or you need to come back later, you can always do that from LutheranServiceBuilder.com. Here is my contact information once more, anna.johnson@cph.org. You can see my phone number here. I also put our software support lineup. And one thing I like to say in all of these webinars is that software support isn't just for if you're having a bug or you think something is super broken. If you have a question about something, if I did something today and I went way too fast or I didn't explain it that well, please do reach out to the support team. That's why they're here. They can help you as well. If you want to ask me, that's fine. Both groups, either me or the support team, are happy to help. And if I don't know how to do something, I will definitely research it and hopefully get you an answer as soon as possible. I'm going to wait a few more minutes here to see if we have any other questions. So if you have those, again, thanks for coming today. I'm going to show one more site. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing out on anybody's questions. We also have an online help system, and we can share this probably later. It's lsb2.zendesk.com, and many of the things I went through today are in this help system. If you guys remember the old site, it was a little bit harder to navigate the help system. We've had one of our testers here who has worked very diligently to make sure that the new help system gets updated. So you can use this as a reference as well if you go into creating and editing services. You'll see all these things we talked about today, especially about rights, are all in this LSB2 help system for you to use and to refer back to in the future. It looks like I don't have any more questions today, so we're going to end a little bit early. I hope that's okay with everyone. Again, thank you for coming, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.